Hello everyone, today we are going to build a MemoMap that will help you to remember the muscle metabolism forever. First, does muscle need ATP during exercise only? Actually, no. The muscle need ATP all the time, both in rest and during the contraction. During the rest, the ATP is needed for three main things. First, keeping the resting membrane potential. Second, synthesis of chemical substance. Third, maintaining the muscle tone. What about the contraction? ATP is needed during the contraction for the actin-myosin interaction or the cross bridge. So the second question is, where does ATP come from? Actually, the first is the stored ATP. The muscle used first the stored ATP. However, the stored ATP can keep the contraction up to 5 seconds. So after this, we need to synthesize ATP. So we switch to three energy system, which are the phosphogenic system, the anaerobic glycolytic, and aerobic oxidative. The phosphogenic and the glycogen lactic system both are anaerobic, does not need oxygen, while the oxidative is the only aerobic need the oxygen. Now let's start with our first system, which is the phosphogen system, which is the fastest energy system producing an ATP. It needs no oxygen. It depends on the creatine phosphate react with the ADP to produce an ATP and creatine, and it supply a power for 15 seconds, so it's perfect for 100-meter run. The second system is glycogen lactic system, or which depending on the glucose or glycogen in the muscle converted to pyruvate, and then pyruvate become lactate, and it produce ATP quickly, but it is also limited amount of the ATP, around 4 ATP, and it is perfect for the exercise like 200-meter sprint, since it maintains the contraction only for the 40 seconds. What about the lactic? The lactic should be removed from the muscles, and we have three ways to remove the lactic from the muscle: either in the liver, converted to glucose and glycogen; in the heart, used as a foil; in other tissue, convert lactic to pyruvate, which is further oxidated. The last system with us is the oxidative phosphorylation, and it is the endurance one. Since it gives a large amount of the ATP, it depends and need an oxygen, and the foil for the system is carb, whether glucose or glycogen or fat, and in the presence of oxygen, this produces carbon dioxide waters and around 40 ATP. This system is slower to start, but it continues for hours. So it is the dominant energy source during the marathons. Now let's compare the systems, the three systems. The main point to compare is the oxygen. So oxidative phosphorylation is the only system need oxygen. Regarding the foil, phosphogen depend on phosphocreate, glycogen lactic need glucose or glycogen, oxidative phosphorylation fat or carb. For the duration of contraction, the phosphogen maintain the contraction 15 seconds, the glycogen lactic maintain contraction 40 seconds, while the oxidative phosphorylation, the contraction maintained unlimited. The best example for exercise performed by phosphogen is 100-meter run, by glycogen lactic is 200-meter, and of course for the marathon, the best system for ATP synthesis is the oxidative phosphorylation. After you end your exercise, your breathing remains fast. Why? Because your body needs to correct the damage happened during the exercise. And this is called the oxygen debit, which is the excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. Remember, it is excess and it's occur post the exercise, not during exercise. And this oxygen is needed for 3R, which are remove of the lactic acid, restoring the ATP, and reload or refill the myoglobin with the oxygen which is consumed. Okay, so how we measure the oxygen debit? Easily estimate the total oxygen consumption minus the basal oxygen consumption. So you need to know your basal oxygen consumption before exercise and the total oxygen consumption at the end of exercise. Subtract both of them, you get the oxygen debit. Which foil does the muscles prefer? Is it the carb or is it a fat? Remember that the carb, we use it with oxygen or without oxygen, and the carb is the glucose and the glycogen. The free glucose come from the blood, and the glycogen either in the muscle or in the liver. Remember that the free glucose and the glycogen is efficient to keep the contraction only up to 100 meters. So anyone who's doing exercise, it's essential to have glucose solutions during the exercise. So the question now, when we use a carb and when we use the fat, actually, to remember this, remember the I, the four I's. The whether the muscle choose the fat or the carb, it depending on the intensity of the exercise. The maximum exercise, the carb is the best foil, while for the moderate exercise, the fat is the best foil. The second I is the interval or the duration. For the prolonged duration exercise, the fat is the best foil. The third I is the input. If we have a high level of free fatty acids, so the fat is the best foil. The last I is improved training or the training status. If you are endurance trained athlete, so the fat is the best foil for it rather than the. Let's recap together the topic for today. Muscle need energy, yes, during rest and contraction. The source of energy is the ATP, either the stored or the newly sensitized. We have three systems for the synthesis of the ATP: the phosphagen system, the glycogen lactic, and the oxidative phosphorylation. Only oxidative need an oxygen. The foil either phosphokerate, carb, or carb and fat. The duration for the contraction for the phosphagen is 15, while for the glycogen lactic is 14, and for the oxidative phosphorylation is unlimited. And the oxygen debit means the post-exercise oxygen consumption, excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, and this is needed to remove the lactic to reform the ATP and to refill the myoglobin. The main foil for exercise, either carb or the fat, but the carb, either free or stored carb, the glycogen, enough for contraction up to 100 minutes. Whether we use fat or carb, depending on the intensity of the exercise, the duration, the level of free fatty acid, and the trainee status. Remember, for the maximum short contraction, carb is the best. For prolonged moderate, fat is the best. When we have a free fatty acid excess in the blood, the fat becomes the foil for the muscle. And if you are trainee, the fat will be the consumed foil by the muscle. We have two types of exercise: aerobic and anaerobic. Regarding the aerobic, best example for it is the sprinting or weight-lift, while the aerobic is a marathon. The anaerobic consume carb, mainly like glucose or glycogen, in addition to phosphokerate, aerobic carb or fat. The lactate is produced excess in N compared to the aerobic. The fatigue mainly occur rapidly in anaerobic and delayed in the aerobic. That's all for MemoMap today. See you in next MemoMap videos.